The referee. They're gonna stop this. They're gonna stop.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Post-fight reactions to Claressa Shields' dominant points win over Marisela Cornejo Sunday Convo. On Saturday night, the #1 women's pound-for-pound fighter,
Maybe to the author of this article, Abraham Gonzalez,
pound-for-pound #1 to him, it's not unanimous, received a big homecoming as the main event at the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. The undisputed middleweight champion Claressa Shields successfully defended her titles with a shutout decision win over Marisela Cornejo. Shields' impressive performance was in front of a big crowd of approximately 11,784 fans in attendance, which also hosted boxing legends from Detroit
and the national anthem being sung by the legendary Four Tops.
I feel like the post-fight reaction to Claressa's dominant win over Marisela Cornejo is somewhat overblown. I mean, if you knew anything about the fighters, if you knew anything about Marisela Cornejo, you would have known going in that she doesn't stand a chance.
She's been dominated by most any formidable fighter that she's ever fought. Franchon Cruz, Alma Ibarra.
Claressa dominating her was a foregone conclusion, and I said as much ahead of the fight. Marisela doesn't stand a chance.
I'm no Monday morning quarterback.
There was no question this was a huge event, and during her ring walk, Shields looked to entertain right away by bringing out rap artist and actress Cash Doll, who is from Detroit and is widely known within hip-hop culture.
Claressa definitely had a good-sized crowd there for the fight, and good crowd engagement whenever she landed one of those big right hands.
That got a pop from the crowd, and everyone in attendance looked forward to the fight. Right from the start, Cornejo looked like a fighter that didn't belong in that ring, as she seemed overwhelmed by the moment and what Shields was showing her. Cornejo tried to have some movement, but Shields was landing that overhand right clean and hard.
Does that make her the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, though?
To some boxing scribes and to some fight fans, I don't deny their existence. I'm just saying that it's not unanimous. It's not a consensus. There are some people out there who still view Katie as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in spite of her losing to Chantel Kimran. There are some others who view Amandia Serrano as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport.
She's the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list.
As far as Claressa, there aren't that many money fights for Shields out there, other than the winner between undisputed super middleweight champion Franchon Cruz and Savannah Marshall, who face off in July
1st.
That fight would be at super middleweight, so Shields would have to move up once again to try and become a 4-time undisputed champion, which would be quite a feat. If Shields doesn't get that fight and is looking for one in between, there's always revisiting the Hannah Gabriel's fight or facing the undefeated Raquel Miller, who she has gone back and forth with on social media in the past. Shields is levels above the fighters in and around her weight class, which isn't her fault. She will continue to have difficulty finding competitive dance partners between 154 and 168, unless some of the young fighters in the amateurs start to turn pro and challenge her within the next few years.
My thoughts.
Claressa's definitely top 5 pound-for-pound, #2 on my list. But dominating 154, 160, and 168 hardly makes her the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport because those are shallow weight classes.
Becoming a 3-time undisputed champion?
At those weights, in those weight classes, it's a lot easier to do that than becoming a 3-time undisputed champion at, say, I don't know, 126, 130, and 135. There are a lot more girls down there at those weights than what you'll find up there at 154 and 160 and 168. Those are thin divisions.
Yeah.
It's harder to become an undisputed champion at the lower weights. Much harder because there are that many more champions and that many more contenders, that many more good fighters.
Talent pool is much deeper, so to say that Claressa Shields is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport for dominating what are mostly barren weight classes is a gross oversight. That's not a slight on her, that's just reality.
She's currently ranked the #1 women's middleweight in the world out of only 35 girls. There are only 35 girls worldwide ranked in that division. Compare that to, say...
Compare it to super bantamweight, where there are 4 reigning champions and approximately 189 ranked super bantamweights. 189.
There are 5 times as many girls to fight. 5 times as many girls to take on at super bantamweight than what you'll find at middleweight. Drop down to bantamweight.
It's the same shit.
Same deal. 4 reigning champions, 4 active champions you'd have to take on to become an undisputed champion, and approximately 5 times as many challengers, 5 times as many fighters as what you'll find at middleweight. Most will point out
Shields dominates most of her opponents, but there ain't that many opponents to dominate. That's why, since having debuted as a professional in 2016, she's only fought about 14 times.
compared to, say, Katie Taylor, who debuted the same year as Clarissa, but has fought 23 times. 23 to Clarissa's 14.
And even with those 14 fights, you're still looking at rematches with Hannah Gabriels, a potential rematch with Savannah Marshall,
Ain't that many.
or Franchon Cruz.
There just ain't that many girls to fight up there. Currently, Amandia Serrano is ranked as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list on the premise that she's taken the same number of belts from the same number of champions as Clarissa Shields, but she's been a champion at more weights than Clarissa Shields. She's a 7-division champion.
The silver lining for Clarissa is that she's still very young, so she may be able to outlast her older contemporaries like Katie Taylor, like Chantel Cameron, like Amanda Serrano.
Clarissa's younger than those fighters, and she still has many good years left. So, over time, she may see herself crowned the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, though here and now, that would be a gross oversight for dominating what are barren weight classes.
And an overmatched opponent in Marisela Cornejo.
I think those eggs need more bacon, I do. So long as Amanda Serrano is around, and should Katie Taylor get herself back in the winner's bracket in the fall, I think either one of them have a more legitimate claim towards being the #1 pound-for-pound fighter than Clarissa.
Because anybody who knows women's boxing knows the talent pool gets much deeper the lower you go, and the opponents, they get harder to beat.
That's just reality. You don't have to like it. In men's lightweight and super lightweight news, Devin Haney proved he's the best fighter in the world, says his father, Bill Haney.
I expect his father to say something like that, though. If you ask around, that's not the response you're going to get. That's not the reaction, least of all after the controversial outcome of the Vasyl-Lomachenko fight. Controversy aside,
Bill Haney, the father of Devin Haney, was extremely pleased with his son's ability to rise to the occasion. Now, after banking the most impressive victory of his young career, Bill is of the belief that his offspring should be viewed in a more flattering light. Pound for pound, #1, said an excited Bill with respect to his son's victory. Don't doubt him no more. Crown him. He's #1 in the world.
these thoughts would only really be allowed to blossom in an echo chamber away from the majority of fight fans, pros, and pundits who scored that same fight for Vasyl-Lomachenko. And Devin Haney's core supporters have been working hard to try and convince people that it wasn't controversial, that the right man won the fight.
The main thing here is if you doubt what I'm saying, then conduct an independent poll on your own on a big social media platform like a Twitter or a Facebook here on YouTube, and what you'll find is that most people scored that fight for Lomachenko.
I know I did.
But if you think I'm lying or exaggerating, then conduct an independent poll of your own. I know you won't do it.
You want to be in denial. Okay, be in denial by yourself.
You're not convincing me of anything, and I'm not trying to convince you because I don't need to.
You're in the minority.
The majority rules, bitch. So Lomachenko himself believes that he exposed Devin Haney. Now he understands his level. On the heels of a controversial outcome like that, hardly anyone would rate Devin Haney as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. I think that...
Not just the controversy in a general sense. Most people either have Alexander Usyk, Naoya Inoue, Terrence Crawford, or Canelo Alvarez ranked at #1.
Between those 4 guys, Vasyl-Lomachenko himself stated, it's never going to happen when asked who would win between Davis and Haney, because now he being Devin Haney, understands his skills, understands his level.
Gervonta Davis is having a bit of legal trouble, as you all may know, and I know of no offer from Team Davis that has been made to Team Haney for a fight, though they have time. The ball is in their court. They can do that.
Well, Gervonta Davis serves out the remainder of his sentence, which isn't even all that long. By summer's end, he could be a free man. They can set up a fight in the fall or winter months, but as stated, I know of no offer that has gone out from Team Davis to Team Haney.
None.
If you're the A-side and you're the biggest name anywhere at or around these weights, the onus is on you to make it happen, not Devin. Devin's a free agent.
So even if he wasn't, do you think Gervonta Davis would accept any offer from him to cross the street?
Thus, you can't fault Devin Haney if that fight doesn't happen this year, if that fight doesn't materialize in the fall or winter months. Vasyl-Lomachenko seems to think that he will go up to 140 and just fight regular fighters. But let me tell you something about the fighters, the regular fighters at 140. Most of them
are bigger men and bigger punchers than not just Devin Haney, but than Vasyl Lomachenko.
If Devin Haney and his father really aspire to prove that Devin is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport, in the world, that's one place he can start. That's one place he can do it, though I don't think it will be easy. 140 is not a division that is for the faint of heart. They're courting the idea of fighting Regis Prograis sometime down the line. I don't anticipate that will be Devin Haney's very next fight.
No.
Per the rules that govern the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, if he vacates all the titles that he had at 135, he will be ejected from the list per the rules that govern it. The list is only for winners and only for champions. Emphasis on champions, reigning champions. Until such a time as Devin procures a belt, presumably at 140, he's off the list.
That's if he vacates. He hasn't yet.
Though most feel that he will, because he's not on the cusp of getting a Gervonta Davis fight, and he doesn't seem too keen on sticking around for Shakur Stevenson. Not if he's courting the idea of moving up to 140 and fighting Regis Prograis.
What if he beat Regis?
In a scenario like that would get him back on.
If he were to fight Regis and beat Regis and take his WBC title, that would give him a credible enough argument in that scenario to be reintegrated into the list.
So how many of you feel that he can? The million-dollar question is, when does the fight take place? When? How many fights from now?
Versus how the fighters are looking at that time. How is Devin Haney looking? How is Regis Prograis?
How's he going to be holding up 1 fight from now, 2 fights from now, 3 fights from now, however long it takes to make this one?
This fight.
That speaks to Devin Haney's chances. The sooner the fight happens, the more it favors Regis. But because Regis is many years older than Devin, Devin's got youth on his side.
And time.
Though not power. And power, as they say, is the last thing to go. I don't think Devin Haney is ever going to be a puncher of epic proportions.
But 140 won't be as hard to make for him, so he will get a slight boost, not having to cut the extra 5 to make 135, campaigning at 140.
We just have to wait and see how he makes out.
It's too soon to tell.
And finally, in men's super middleweight and cruiserweight news, Canelo's being offered a shot at cruiserweight title by world champion Come and See Me. The cruiserweight champion they're talking about is newly crowned WBC cruiserweight champion Badou Jack. Whilst he tries to make the rematch with Bivol happen, talk has returned to a potential further jump to cruiserweight. He was previously building up a fight with the then WBC champion Lunga Makabu, with the sanctioning body approving Canelo's request to take the challenge and even hosting a face-off between the pair at its annual conference.
The fight with Canelo and Makabu obviously never happened. It's important to note that I know of no interest expressed from the Canelo side in fighting Badou Jack.
This isn't them saying they want to move up and fight him in place of Makabu. This is Badou Jack himself saying he would afford Canelo a title shot if he wanted one. And it being that Badou Jack is a skills challenge fighter, a skills challenge champion, one of 2 champions they have in their stable.
Prince and all that Saudi money. They've got the kind of scratch, the kind of cash that Canelo Alvarez is used to making, so it's possible they could make him an offer.
Lunga Makabu, who Team Canelo had expressed some interest in fighting, he has since lost his belt to Badou Jack. And the Saudi Arabia-based 39-year-old spoke to Boxing King Media about a potential fight with the Mexican.
If Canelo Alvarez were to take up Badou Jack on his offer, this potential title shot, the opportunity to see about becoming a 5-division champion.
I can already hear the boo birds now. I can already hear the critics criticizing Canelo for fighting Badou Jack potentially instead of David Benavidez, instead of Demetrius Andrade. It's for this reason that I would actually prefer he fight one of them in September instead of Badou Jack. That's something for later.
Not now.
Absolutely it would interest me. He's one of the biggest names, and he said he wanted to fight Makabu before he fought Bivol. I'm smaller than Makabu, so he can come see me if he wants to.
Badou Jack, technically a 3-division champion. He used to be a champion at super middle. He was a full-fledged champion briefly at light heavy after Ward retired, but before he vacated the WBA title.
He being Badou Jack. You have to remember that after Andre Ward retired, Andre Ward, the then WBA super champion, Badou Jack was the regular champion.
After Andre retired, Badou Jack was the only WBA champion of any kind at that time, and in that way,
for a brief period, he was a full-fledged champion, but he decided to vacate the WBA title upon being ordered to fight Dimitri Bivol.
That's how that happened. Now, a lot of time has passed, and he's a cruiserweight champion, WBC cruiserweight champion, and he's willing to fight Canelo.
Is Canelo willing to fight him? Things aren't working out for that Bivol rematch. According to Vadim Kornilov, Bivol's manager, Canelo's got stupid demands. You know, they want it at 168, whereas Canelo wants it at 175,
right,
where the first fight took place. They're not having any luck in that department, so that leaves David Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade at super middleweight. And I do like those fights more than this one, even though this one comes with the prestige of becoming a 5-division champion, which is no easy feat, least of all for a pocket-sized guy like Canelo.
He is not a big guy. He never was.
But you know, the Andrade fight, the Benavidez fight, those fights have more backstory than this one does.
Now, last week, Team Canelo said they had yet to receive an offer from either Matchroom or the PBC.
To that, Samson Lukowicz responded with what was supposed to be a screenshot of email correspondence.
A supposed offer that he made them.
In what is a bona fide case of he said, she said. Who do you want to believe?
Naturally, Canelo's fans are going to believe Eddie, and the PBC fans, the Haymanites, they're going to believe Samson.
For me and my money, I'd prefer Canelo stay put at super middleweight and take out the trash, take out the garbage, take out Demetrius Andrade. It's about time somebody shut him up.
Take out David Benavidez. How long are you going to let these guys keep riding your wave, riding your coattails?
These guys can't get no kind of attention unless they mention Canelo Alvarez, and it's nauseating.
You go up there, you fight Badou Jack, you become a 5-division champion. That's not going to shut these guys up.
Now let me tell you something. For a guy Canelo Alvarez's size, with Canelo's physical dimensions, that's a very broad leap from super middleweight up to cruiserweight, which is just a nose hair away from heavyweight. Oh, I understand that Badou Jack, he's a super middleweight that moved up in weight.
But he's no pint-sized guy like Canelo Alvarez, so let's not be disingenuous here.
And he's no newbie to the weight. In case you haven't realized, Badou Jack has been campaigning as a cruiserweight for approximately 6 fights in the last 3 years. He is acclimated.
6 fights.
So it's intriguing. It is intriguing because Canelo Alvarez is in many ways the naturally smaller man, but I'd still prefer to see him fight David in September.
Or Demetrius.
Though because Canelo Alvarez isn't bound to anyone, because he is a free agent with full autonomy, it's possible Skills Challenge makes this guy an offer and he takes it because they've got more money to play here today.
They've got Saudi money. They can make it worth his while. They can make him an offer. They can make that fight happen.
They haven't made him an offer yet, but let's see if they do.